Free gang of three: AI, generative AI is the productive, constructive part of thinking.
I think the two inflection points, computing has become much cheaper, especially GPUs have become much more powerful and much more cheaper than earlier. So you could now experiment much more.
You guys know Good Day, the most famous bot, right? You ask a question, it will just start with M and with something else, right? It was abusive to that code.
If you look from an experience standpoint, I think everything is moving towards conversational. That is the core, underlying fact of how we are thinking about AI today. Everything needs to become conversational.
I will now invite Vaishali to kind of kick off today's session. A good friend, again, a very well known. She's been in Startup Saturdays and other Headstart events very early on. We used to Lamakan for 6 years. We were in Lamakan. So we used to do it in Lamakan every month and then moved to other locations. Came back here, went out again, and recently I said, okay, let's bring it back here. So it's back. Started here, first 2 years was here, then 6 years in Lamakan. And then, so Vaishali is no stranger or not new to Startup Saturday. So Vaishali, thank you so much for agreeing to this session. For all yours.
Hi, very happy Saturday. Thank you for all of you for making it. I know it's raining and it's one of those days where you just want to stay home and have chai. Thank you for coming and listening to the speaker, share their perspectives. I am Vaishali Neotia, ex-entrepreneur. I started because, like Ramesh was saying, when Startup Saturday was in Lamakan, which is in the other side of the city, I had a deep tech startup for about a decade. We are much before the infrastructure that we see today. So I'm very happy personally to see where Hyderabad has come. Ran it for a decade, shut down after COVID. So the failure journey I've seen as well. And worked in Tech for Impact briefly with the Philanthropies Sugar Foundation. And now I work with an early stage venture capital fund called India Partners, one of the few headquartered in Hyderabad. And we invest in tech-enabled companies across deep tech, SaaS, fintech, digital and life sciences. Very happy to be here today, to talk about. And actually, I was going to say, because we're just so few of us, we can keep it open so we can make it interactive and we can do a lot more one-on-one takeaways. But we have some great panelists today. I'll invite all of them. We've got Arjun, ex-Microsoft, runs his own startup now. Arjun, please. We've got Vamshi from Kalari. Also know Vamshi from Kalari. He's been in this ecosystem forever. He has experience and been an entrepreneur himself. And of course, now invests with Kalari Capital. And of course, Ramesh, he's also joining us today. Please, Ramesh. Startup Cafe, one of the early ones in the city, and of course now with IIIT, wearing an academic hat as well. Would love to hear his diverse perspectives. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining. The topic for today is GenAI, startups, and costs. But again, like I said, we can fine tune it based on what the needs of the audience here is. We want to start with the basics of what GenAI is, how is it different from AI. Yes, I see heads nodding. Do we start with the academic piece? Okay, I start with the philosophical piece around this. So I've been reading Edward de Bono. I don't know if any of you are familiar. And then we'll pass on to the professor here. So he has a very interesting differentiation, for the ways of thought, right, or thinking. So as per him, and he calls, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, the Greek gang of three. He said a lot of them, their sort of rules and thoughts influenced Western thinking. And he says a lot of it is very, analysis-based, very deconstructive, very critical, argumentative. That's a great way of thinking. But they've completely ignored the productive, constructive, generative aspects of thinking. So I just wanted to say, for me, the analogy is the Greek gang of three: AI, generative AI is the productive, constructive part of thinking. So I'll give it to Professor Ramesh to take it up from there. Yes.
So, I keep saying this. It's not like one fine day, something fancy landed from the skies, right? It feels that way. Suddenly with, right, ChatGPT and such, it feels like it just landed from the skies. It didn't, right? They themselves have been working on it as OpenAI for 6-7 years before that. And then, of course, every research group in the country, in the world, have been working on different parts of it for a long time. It's a continuum, right? It's evolving. Yes, I think the two inflection points, computing has become much cheaper, especially GPUs have become much more powerful and much more cheaper than earlier. So you could now experiment much more. You can experiment much more now than you could, say, maybe 5 years back, or definitely 10 years back. You needed much bigger computers and not easily available. So that's on one side. And generally research, so much of research happening, so a lot of body of knowledge building, right, across the world. OpenAI is only one slice of that knowledge. Yes, very loud slice, very visible, very loud slice, but that's only one slice. So AI is not new, right? And today also I keep taking the example when somebody says like magic will happen and people will lose their jobs, or like startups can happen without us doing anything by leveraging tools. None of it's going to, there's no substitute for work and hard work. There's no substitute for that. I take the example of test automation in the software industry. We've had automation tools forever, and the tools have been getting better and better and better. Now, of course, in keeping with the times, they're all now AI powered tools or GenAI powered tools, right? But test automation tools have been there forever. You go look at any of the best engineering groups, product engineering groups, right? If you ask them, the best ones probably have maybe 30%, 40% automation, not more than that, right? Especially if it's a conventional product which has UI and such, 30, 40%. Now, the question is like, if the tools have been around forever and they've been getting better and better, why is automation so low? It's very expensive, right? Automation is expensive. So like, so same with AI. So it will solve purpose-specific problems. Just because there's a camera that it can detect everything, you're not going to deploy, right, to detect anything and everything. It's going to be like, where there are problems worth solving, those will be solved. So purpose-specific solutions will come up, but be all, end all, kind of like just give it some inputs and it will just completely spit out code that I can now take and run it in production. That's not happening. Nowhere soon, right? Only, but problems will get solved. So that technology has been evolving. Language has been evolving very good last several years. Conversation systems, right? And you think, right, today in this day and age, with so much of powerful AI-powered conversational systems, there are still tier 1 enterprises in the country, right? I don't want to name them. That you go to the support bot, it still spits out menus. That I click, I can't type anything. Right? And but technology has been evolving, language technologies have been evolving, computer vision, of course, is one big area. A lot has been happening around computer vision, autonomous systems, right? We talk about autonomous cars, like we have the best robotics research group in the country, in Asia almost, but definitely in the country. And that group is not excited about autonomous cars. They say, getting a car running on the campus, we can do it. I mean, I'll just tell my students in 3 months, they'll get the car running. That's not interesting for them. They are interested in point problems, right? They are interested in research problems where they're one aspect, like we got a project from ZF where ZF already has autonomous kind of some algorithms built. They had a problem with occlusion, rain occlusion, partial occlusion during rain. So they came up with a specific problem. The professor is excited about that because they're going to get publication out of it. And how do you make the algorithm work as well when there's partial rain? I mean, partial occlusion because of rain. So those are the kind of things. So the research groups are doing work, have been doing work. Point problems will get solved, and but the be all end all is not happening.
Yeah, I just want to touch upon what you were talking about, right? So that everyone understands. So I want you guys to picture a sphere, right? So think about AI as a bigger sphere. Sits within that is ML. Sits within that is DL, deep learning, right? So I think just to touch upon the root of understanding what GenAI is, Professor talked about programs, right? So programs which look at data and learn from data are machine learning. So this was the word until 2022 November, right? So people were looking at, hey, I'm going to create a regression equation, make it like, curve it to 1, and so that my data understands and can predict, right? So that's what the world of AI has been. That's what machine learning. Machine learning is you actually have a program which can sort of figure out stuff from data, right? That's where the best intelligence is. Now AI is if a program can mimic humans, right? Which is it can actually perceive human intelligence and can behave like a human, where we have 10 to the power of whatever 10 billion connections in the head, neurons, right? So that's a trillion connections. So if you look at ChatGPT can anybody guess how many connections and neurons it has? Parameters. GPT-4 has 1.7 trillion, right? This is not even close to what brain has. Now, what exactly is GenAI, right? So the way you should understand is machine learning has been traditional way of programs mimicking data and learning. Now comes deep learning. Deep learning thinks about similar to how our human head is. It's the network of a network of a network where the neurons communicate and connect with each other, where it's super complicated stuff like how it's talking about vision, right? So to look at a picture and understand what it is, today I can paste a picture into ChatGPT and explain it, tell nicely, right? But that's deep learning. It actually has learned over thousands of pictures to know there's a cat in the picture, right? So that's deep learning. Now, generative AI, which is the whole topic of conversation is, think about what generative AI is. Generative AI is, you have this massive amount of data in the internet, right? Suddenly you said, okay, I have humongous amount of compute, I have like unlimited supply of power. I'm going to train my AI on top of it so that it knows everything, right? So 8 years back, Microsoft did that. You guys know Good Day, the most famous bot, right? You ask a question, it will just start with M and with something else, right? It was abusive to that code. Why was it abusive? Because 90% of the content in the internet is inflammatory, right? So you train on something which is bad, the output is bad, right? Suddenly, the world data just, and Microsoft was super fast in that because that's one company which moves fast, fails and learns. It shut down tape, right? And then comes a paper by Google called transformers. That's a very important word. If you guys don't know, never heard about it, please, that's one takeaway from this room. Google it, right? That's the only technology the world is working on with the last 1 year, 2 year, whatever, right? No new innovation is happening on the transformer architecture. That's the only architecture that people are like saying, I'm going to create the best version of GPT. GPT stands for transformer, right? So that's what the whole buzz about generative AI is, which is you have all this data where another keyword you should learn is RLHF, right? Reinforced learning with human in the loop, okay? Which means if there is no human in the loop, you will have a take experience, which is you ask something, you get something else out. Ask it to create a gun, it will tell you exactly detailed steps of how to create a gun, right? But go ask ChatGPT how do I make a gun, it will not answer, right? Because there was a human which said, yep, it should not answer. Ask ChatGPT, tell a joke on woman, it will say, sorry, I can't help you, right? But ask it to tell a joke on man, it's going to give you 10 jokes. I don't know that like I was, but you train it to tell jokes on men, right? But again, this is not intelligence of the AI there, right? There was a human who meticulously went and said, this is good content, this is bad content, this is how it should generate. Where transformers, RLHF, massive amounts of data and compute, right? Put together all this Gen AI. It's not smart, it's dumb, it's stupid, right? The only good thing is, it is all very nicely curated, right? It's very, you give it garbage in, garbage out as a computer, that's exactly the same here. The only thing is, it actually understands your intent, right? Which means the context is important. So that's another parameter you are in the AI space, right? Where the context for ChatGPT when it was launched was super low. You ask a question, after 7 prompts, it did not know what it was talking, it will restart, right? But now if you ask a question, it will remember where you started, what you're trying to understand, like how we interact, right? Like sort of, I saw you, I pick up where we left off, I can make connections because I'm able to remember something in the background and make connections to it. That's what context is. Right? So that's where the whole world is. Like Google claims they have 1 million context window tokens. These are all jargons and all. And then ChatGPT has 128K top context window. That's where the whole world is about. I ask a question, can something generate me content which is logical, which understands my context, which understands my intent. Like intent is, I don't have to ask like how you was telling about most of the websites you ask a chatbot, it will give you a structured answer, right? Because it does not know what to answer because it's only doing rule-based algorithms. So ChatGPT is really good in that way because unlike Google search, when you become a great keyword master, ChatGPT, you just ask anything on your mind, it tries to figure out what your intent is and then generate an answer for you, right? Because every answer is unique. Because it does not know, it does not remember, there's no intelligence in that. So that's precisely, I know it's a bummer for most of you guys thinking, yeah, AI is going to be super good technology, but unfortunately it's not. Yeah, so that's
Thank you, Ajay. Vamshi, anything else to add to that?
I think from a academic standpoint.
No,
I know.
practical standpoint we have to hear.
No, I'm sure, I graduated 25 years back, but they used to theory of computation, right, as a subject, which I'm sure is still there in the academia. But people would talk about AI, I had no clue what the hell it was, because we were working on 32-bit systems, right, which is hardly any memory which you can think about where to run AI and all that. So I think currently, for us, what we look at is, I think the whole processing, right? If you look at the last year, it's almost close to $115 billion that has gone into just infrastructure. All put together with investments into building application solutions and all that, there's been like $600 billion which has been invested in just last 1 year. Now, if you look at in the last 1 year, we have not been able to generate even $1 billion out of it. Okay, everything that you have. So while it is just amazing to see what it takes and the prospect of what it is going to do to us, I think in a simpler way, it is about going back to the basics and understanding what are we trying to solve for, right? So I think if you look from an experience standpoint, I think everything is moving towards conversational. That is the core, underlying fact of how we are thinking about AI today. Everything needs to become conversational. From what you were looking at a report to from what you might be, looking from an SAP perspective or even from a commerce perspective or a customer support perspective, I think everything needs to be conversational. If it needs to be conversational, which means it needs to learn a lot about what we are doing and what we have been interacting with the systems. So if you look from whether it is consumer standpoint, whether it is from a support standpoint, from an enterprise standpoint, or from a manufacturing standpoint, I think we are really conversing with the systems. We really want to converse in a better and a simpler way, and that is where I think solutions are emerging basically, right? So nothing more than that. It's just, I want to start, today, even if you look at your device, your phone, basically, you're opening a device and actually conversing on WhatsApp, which is like you're typing and doing a lot of work, which is useless. Today, I cannot speak into it and it can do it properly so that we can translate and put it without typos. Look at the amount of typos you have where people are sending WhatsApps and texts. It's horrible, right? That is as simple as that. If I can make speech the basic foundation of the language which is learned, and it can effectively be able to solve for whatever I am doing, whether it's enterprise, whether it's buying, whether it's customer support, whether it is travel, whether it's manufacturing, doesn't matter. So the underlying thing is about the data I have, how much deep I can learn, and what is saying basically, reinforce learning and remove hallucination, right? As long as we can get there, I think that's what it is. But the whole point is, do we have the infra to kind of build solutions right now which are cheap, which is not the case today. So I think that's where everyone is investing in the infra right now first. And that's why NVIDIA is where it is today. Because before, if you don't have the roads, what are you going to build for, right? So I think everyone is investing in that.
Yeah, and we at NDA, we talk about this. We say earlier, VC money was going to Facebook and Google, and now it's going to NVIDIA. So, no, thank you so much for these inputs. So, of course, we've heard a huge expansive piece here, not just about what GenAI is, but also, where typically, from their perspectives, it's come from and where it's going. There's so much food for thought here. Infra, as Vamshi touched upon, is a big question. Recently, I don't know if any of you read, Altman invested a lot of personal wealth in, a nuclear energy startup, Helion. And of course, years away from actually being able to deliver anything, and it's quite ambitious, but the energy requirements for actually doing what we're doing. For us, it's just, some lines on a computer, like some words that we see, but what goes behind it, the massive consumption of resources that these data centers are taking. The drinking water, I don't know how many of us think about it from a climate tech perspective, but just for cooling, there's so much, and pure distilled drinking water is what these data centers need, to cool themselves. So even figuring out, can future data centers be, in the sea or, in the ocean so that it's not going to take away resources from mankind. I think more than taking away our jobs, if we have to worry, we have to worry about what it's going to do to actual resources, that humans need to survive, water and energy. So there's just so much to think around these lines. To just sort of put it succinctly, I mean, at the end of the day, because generative AI it's sort of canned response versus creative response, when you're able to synthesize data to a point where you can generate creative outputs, intuitive outputs towards a conversational environment, right? Where you're closer. At the end of the day, all of this is to make our lives simpler. And, and if that's where we are heading, how can we use it to make our startup simpler or to create solutions which can help solve somebody else's problem. That's essentially why anybody is going to start a company, right? To build a sustainable business solving problems. So let's hear from the panelists now, examples of cases where, within their portfolios or within, startups that they've worked with, their own startups, what are some use cases of Gen AI which are tangibly showing either efficiency improvement, either cost optimization, in some way beneficial to the people using it or to customers. Would love to hear examples. Arjun, would you like to start with
Sure.
what you are doing?
Yeah. So I'll actually just touch upon what you were saying. It's absolutely like this, very conversational. But the important thing that AI is doing is it's making everything accessible, right? So if you remember, the whole move to digitization was supposed to understand Salesforce. We were supposed to understand Dynamics because you're a Salesforce certified customer support agent, right? Because you're supposed to train on a tool rather than you need to understand a particular customer's business and workflow to solve, right? Now, I'm talking from an enterprise standpoint, and you can generalize for your day-to-day life also, like some of the examples he's talking about. So the intent is AI will enable you to achieve your outcome. It will not ask you to learn a tool or learn a particular program where you don't have to understand how I should just open my customer profile, figure out what attribute of phone number and pick up, where should the notes go. That's all yesterday with AI. Which means suddenly you have a user interface, right? User interface where you simply talk to it and it's multimodal. Multimodal is speech, vision, and audio. Text, vision, and audio. 3 modes. So it can actually synthesize all of that and can act on it, right? So conversation is one part of it. So what we do at our thing is we have our attendance management system because it was a startup at the end of the day. And we need to figure out ways to optimize cost. I have a small team deployed remotely. I can't just have a manager there and then figure out if these guys are coming to office or not. So what we did is we created our one simple employee check-in, check-out system, right? If he has to go to office, every day he comes to the place where he's supposed to come, takes a picture of himself, where we automatically capture his picture because people age over time. Right, so our model understands like this guy is the same guy with mustache and eggs. I mean, we figured out all of that through some vision stuff, and then we use Google coordinates to understand. Yeah, he's at the right place, right? Which means he's checking in. Same thing, he checks out, he's leaving out, right? The leave management process, onboarding employees, parsing their Aadhaar card, PAN card, because I don't have the HR admin lady who's going to look at Aadhaar card, punch into a system, right? They simply send us pictures, and our system processes them and adds it to the patient record. Not patient record, but employee record. Other example is our own employees. I don't have an HR dedicated admin. My HR person does, filling coffee, getting snacks for my guys, and making sure everybody is coming. I mean, she's a multitasker. The reason she's able to do all of that is all these HR policies are actually trained by our HR bot. Where if I simply ask, "Can we have a holiday for Diwali?" Where they can't ask me, so they simply go to the bot and ask, "Is there Diwali holiday?" The bot says, "No." Right? Or the fun way, right? It'll tell you like, no, we're actually compensating for something else. So we've put out all our HR policies into our whole smart assistant, where the human element is completely gone. Right? So it's always accessible. We have a WhatsApp bot, so we can use it for themselves. Similarly, we organically increase it to say, yeah, let's extend that and provide us customer support service for some of our customers. We create a small product around it and we've been like selling for I don't know why we are selling it. We seem to be selling a lot of that product these days. But it's like end to end. It enables somebody to get trained on their enterprise data, can trigger a bunch of workflows behind the scenes. It makes that whole customer element to support process extremely obsolete, right? Because this is mundane, going through a bunch of script and doing it. Very mundane. So that's one example. And the second thing is that we're doing a good project where so there is an audio very simple audio file, right? And then to transcribe it, you have to buy a transcription service and have a video editor come in and put in. So we are actually creating a simple Telugu language spoken video. We translate it into Hindi after transcription and then insert it back into the video so it's accessible. Right? So that's something that's not possible before. Right? To do that, you can hire an editor who charges 1 lakh rupees per month and a video editor who is like another 20,000-30,000 rupees per month. Combine these two, make them work, and then get it done, as opposed to you upload and get output out in like less than 2 to 3 minutes, right? So areas of opportunities which were unheard of before, right? So that sort of opens up the door for a lot of opportunities where generative AI offers. And coming to the cost factor though, right? It's massively costly, right? You shouldn't use AI if you don't know how to use it for what use cases. So the best way is try to get experts who understand how to cache, what kind of questions are repetitive questions. So think about AI is nothing but a different programming language. Right? You wouldn't write a database query hitting your DB every time you cache it. Where it is caching it on programmers in the audience, right? You need to write it in an optimized way. The same is true for AI. Don't ask every question to ChatGPT. Right? I mean, it will answer you, but every answer is a cost for you, right? So if you know certain questions are repetitive, there are a bunch of ways of solving it. So you need to know where to optimize cost, which technology to use for what purposes. Like GPT is not good at vision, for example, right? It's only good at language. So there are other tech for vision. There is other tech for audio. So you have to create a mix of all of this and then sort of figure out how it fits in your portfolio. Because there is no know-it-all, solve-it-all problem like everywhere and anywhere else in the world. So you have to be understanding where the tech is going and then leverage that for reduce costs.
And as Arjun mentioned, I mean, prompt engineering is a real role now, right? Like knowing how to get the maximum, or like he said, understanding what is it that you want. Just typing something random into ChatGPT, using natural resources as well for answers that you can just get on Google, for instance, it's kind of pointless. No, great points, Arjun. Vamshi, with your investment in, say, Dubverse, right? I mean, so of course, with any tech, and I think Arjun talked about it, when you train it in a certain way, you'll get the output in a certain way, right? So the same tech can be used to create deepfakes. It can be used to make dubbing so much better, right? With in a live video or a live movie. So Vamshi, of course, has invested in a startup called Dubverse. Would love to hear, how they are using fundamentally GenAI and the tangible effects that you're seeing in the work they're doing.
I think instead of Dubverse, what I'll say is basically when you're building products right now, right? What would you look at? Because we invested in Dubverse say a year and a half ago. We had a lot of investments, of course, like any other SaaS products.
Right.
We all are investing in a lot of companies which are in SaaS and all that. How has it transformed in the last year and a half because of the impact of OpenAI and all that stuff, right? I think that is the critical point, because
Absolutely.
I think a lot of the solutions which you were building, which you were trying to solve for a certain problem, like what you were mentioning, basically in terms of subtitling or audio, basically, all those things, right? I think dubbing and all that stuff was a huge, massive problem. And Dubverse also was building a solution which can make it better and better, right? Like we all have used Google Translate. It's shitty, right?
Yes.
Basically, it's not even 40%. 40% is a big number to say that it does good, right? But it's really horrible. So, and just like folks like Dubverse, we're trying to solve for that, to see how we can translate better and with human in the loop. But the only problem is the infra was not there, because there was no infra, because you were trying to solve it the old way, right?
Correct.
And that necessarily is not the way you would solve it if you were doing a Dubverse today. Okay, even if it is a year and a half.
Right.
So whatever solutions I would have been building, which I was trying to solve for, I would do it very differently today, because the infra is very different right now, and how I can process and do things much faster is very different. I think the critical thing is when we are looking at solutions right now, because when we're seeing there's so much of applications, products, solutions that are being pitched right now, right, from an AI perspective. And sitting on the other side, we know it's very simple. It's commoditized, right? It's pretty much commoditized. I can do, financial modeling. You can throw the Excel file, and you can see GPT and every other model they're putting out advancements every 1 month. You cannot compete with that, period. You don't have the resources, you don't have the money, you don't have anything to compete with trying to build those solutions. All you have to figure out is, like, if people are coming and pitching to me saying that I'm going to be making easier for you to understand financial data, okay, or reporting or anything like that, it is very easy to do on ChatGPT. Today, you all use it.
Yeah.
Where is the difference that is coming from? It is coming from saying that, okay, I can do this for enterprise, right? That is where the core component is coming. If I'm saying I'm solving solutions, I want to solve solutions for enterprise. Now, if I'm solving solutions for enterprises, then there's a whole bunch of things that come into play. It is not the solution. We all understand, and you guys have been invested in SaaS for so long and all that stuff. Because getting and selling to enterprise is the biggest problem, irrespective of whether it's AI or some other thing. Okay. See, the core solutions, yes, it has made it easy. Yes, you can go show a product, but the solution of solving for selling is not going to take any different approach.
Yeah.
So the core component today, yes, people are not understanding on what solutions can an enterprise buy and why would they buy, right? Because they are more protective of their data today. The reason you won't see enterprises jumping in and deploying solutions is because they are very protective of their data. Because employees can do, I mean, you see employees, taking the data out, putting it in ChatGPT and trying to bring it back for ease of use and faster. That's very, very tough, right? So I think, where would I build? I would really build for data security, which is always the key, right? We have seen that.
Especially after the last couple of days.
Right? So I don't think that is going to go away. So if I would build, I would still keep building on that, because I think you can make billions trying to solve for that. When you talk about data security, there's a lot of elements that come in, right? If you look at a typical enterprise solution which you're building, even for example, a financial solution, say you're building today. Today, you look at, if you're going to an enterprise MIS or something, I'm just giving you simple examples. What do you do? A CEO wants to look at a data set in a different way. A sales guy is looking at a data set in a different way. Someone else is looking at a data set. So there's roles and responsibilities the enterprise solutions have built. Now, if I put up a data set and I say, hey, what is my numbers for yesterday for Telangana, whatever it is, sales. Now, should I give or not? That is roles and responsibilities. You are expecting that it should respond. No, it should not respond. So now so data security comes with a lot of elements. If you just take an ERP solution, pull it out and see, there will be 100 components which are working on it. Yeah. I don't want to build a ERP solution. I really want to build those small things which are, so I'm not trying to say I'll train the data and everyone is going to take care of it. I don't need to worry about it. It's expensive, of course. So I'm not going to go build training the data sets, because that's not something which we will be able to go and solve for.
We should leave it to the big guys.
Yeah, I mean, it is costly. I won't have the resources to do it. It's not that I cannot solve it.
Absolutely.
Why? Right? So that is the question. So I would pick these things, roles and responsibilities, right? It's very simple. Should I give Ramesh this data or not? Because it's now in a textual format. Yes. Ramesh is asking, okay, financial numbers, should I give Ramesh this data or not? I'm just giving you an example of that, right? So when you start looking at enterprise, I think that is where it comes to being very, very critical. Now, someone was asking about data analytics, and Ramesh and I were chatting, is that, underlying data lakes or data warehouses, data marts, they've transformed. I wouldn't say they've transformed, they've just been the same. They've just been processing much faster and all that stuff. But the way the data is structured itself needs to change now. Because do I need to create relations, or relations can be created on the fly because I understand the data now? So if there are parameters which are coming to me, I can correlate them on the fly, because I've read and understood that, hey, a customer ID is a customer ID. Who's Ramesh? I can be able to relate with certain elements. I can do it on the fly. With AI, I can do that without having to translate, put a ETL structure towards it, bring it back into a reporting format and all that, because it's conversational. I need to understand. So I can take the data, I can, transform the data over the fly, I can make sense of it. So that layer you can build. Right? So there are simple things. So you have to just take what vertical it is, everyone says productivity, job losses, and I don't think that's the case. I mean, we have seen it's there for a year and a half. I haven't seen anyone getting laid off because they had generative AI or no one. Absolutely not. And that's why I'm saying, with $600 billion going in, has anyone got laid off because saying that, hey boss, this AI is doing the job? No, I don't think so. I think it's more about you're laid off only because you're not able to use the AI properly. That would be the case at least in today's world. So I think my thing is, when we see applications like people are building for verticals, they are coming and saying, hey, you know what? I'll understand the data set. I can bring in human in loop more. I can actually reduce the hallucination much lesser. I can bring in experiences and interface in a simpler way, right? There's someone who's building on, we all do travel tech, say for example, right? We all travel and all that. Just look at the experience. It's shitty, right? We go to booking, we go to ClearTrip, we go to customer support. It's a painful experience. Now it can be integrated with the same underlying level. It's just integrated. You cannot converse today. Say, what is it that you want with the travel? All you're saying is, hey, I want to go to US tomorrow. Tell me what is the price and what is the cheapest price, fastest price. How are you doing that today? You are going, you're opening a site, you're putting 100 things, it sends you a response, you have to check, you have to know whether this is right. Not required. It's a conversation. You're asking me that, okay, tell me this is the best. Okay, I don't like that. I want to take a break in Dubai. Tell me how you're going to do that. This is where, the solution is coming. It is not changing the underlying dynamics. It is just enhancing the experience for the consumer, and the consumer can be an enterprise, consumer can be a consumer, for example. Even if I'm using e-commerce platforms, we are looking and doing things that needs to change, period. Needs to be voice. It needs to be conversational. Again, multimodal, of course. I'm not just saying voice, but everything. So I think that is where this is going to go.
Interesting. So many startup ideas in there, for all the aspiring entrepreneurs. He's talked about so many different ideas that you all can pick up. In fact, interesting that you talked about the identity piece, Vamshi. One of our portfolio companies, Luri, you'll be aware, right? SaaS app management.
We also invested in that.
Correct. So, they came up with the whole IGA piece because of this, because they realized that not everybody should have access to certain apps, and that can be automated, so a piece built on top. And this is again from experience talking to customers. And that's how they came to it. Brilliant. And now, Ramesh, from your perspective and of course, from the academic environment, I think one of the biggest things would be everybody, they look at a problem, they're like, okay, we can build this and let's do something with tech. And the tech first approach. I was guilty of that, by the way, straight out of college, building the deep tech startup that I did. But this whole difficulty of, okay, now what about the translation, right? What about actually being able to commercialize this? Is it actually solving anybody's problem? The tech might be great, it might be really cool, but what are you doing with it? How are you approaching, every time anybody comes up and says, we have this great idea for GenAI. How do you approach that? How do you kind of put them on the right track?
See, thankfully on this campus at least, GenAI is not used much. Because...
And he says thankfully.
Yeah, because everybody I won't be surprised if my driver, the maid, the security guard, everybody says so, no. That's because I think the underlying element on the research side at least, not on the startup side, on the research side at least, we don't use GenAI much. Very rarely I come across in conversation. Because even if something's happening, it'll be something more in terms of something specific that's happening, right? We'll be discussing that for what it is. And I don't think we ever use GenAI per se. Even AI, probably not so much, definitely not GenAI. And so which is good. So on the research side, I don't think this has affected us much. In the sense the problem we're working on, right? When any of the research groups, they are looking at their research areas, whether it is speech or any kind of advanced machine learning techniques or computer vision or robotics or whatever they might be looking at, they are in their own kind of space, right? They look at what's happening in their research area globally, they identify the white spaces, they do it. When companies come to us with problems, then of course most professors are happy taking up those. So, unfortunately, in India, they're not that cutting edge, right? When companies come at least. In IIT, they're experimenting a little bit, so they're just trying the latest. By the way, we do get those. They may be using GenAI a little bit. Startups, I think the noise has reduced. I think now, like Vamsi rightly said, you have to solve a problem at the end of the day, right? If you're solving a problem, it doesn't matter. You're using an open source framework to do it. You're using OpenAI to do it. You're using something else to do it. You're using something custom to do it. It doesn't matter. So long as is the problem being solved, is it being solved in a cost-effective way? One thing I'm seeing happening is like just because we don't have access to tons of resources or tons of compute or even tons of data for that matter. We just had our monthly research seminar series yesterday. Yesterday was on healthcare. I mean, Apollo is talking about so much data. The person was talking, one of the speakers, it was two talks, one research talk, one industry talk in the series. And outside somebody was saying like it's almost impossible to get the data he's talking about in Apollo. It doesn't exist. Now, somebody like Apollo with all the access to the information that they have, it's not digitized. They don't have an effective EMR, so they can't get any diagnostic data. It's all there. Every X-ray is digital, every scan is digital, like every test, whether it's an ECG or whatever, has digital data. Everything is digital, but at best, they're in your email or somebody's email. If not, they're all in isolated pockets. They're not in any. While the data exists, it is not usable because you just can't get to it. And so, in a way, that triggers frugal innovation. Right? I'm saying many like the Svecha open source group, they've built Telugu speech model. You would appreciate this. 140K. It runs on a mobile phone with very high accuracy, much higher than Google or anybody. Speech recognition. And since it was trained with 50,000 people's samples, voice samples across the state, it recognizes most accents very accurately. 140K. Now, they're not even researchers. Now, we're starting to do some work with them. There's a next level, one more initiative going on right now. The idea is to create a Telugu LLM. Now, we can't forget billions. We can't even throw millions at it, right? Dollars. This is being crowdsourced. We're creating using culture data. The first version of LLM is going to be created by just crowdsourcing data. And like 500 billion tokens is the plan. And like, and it's underway, using 100,000 interns, spending a month using an app, building on the speech model that already exists. We said, like, how do you connect? These are all like low resource languages, right? And there's no digital data available. Now, if you ask people to type, who's going to type? So we said, we have this speech kind of ESR. So the whole data is being collected through interviews. And now, if you look at the startup that went to YC just raised $5.5 million, the Sync Labs, which is generative AI in the video space, right? They started with dubbing. A video, movie, or any video, when you have the voice language different from the original recorded, the lips are not in sync. So this one just takes, post-processes the video and synchronizes the sound, modifies the lips to synchronize with the sound, and regenerates the video. So, and now they have 8K versions, you can do it for movies, that's not the target right now. But they found a lot of business use cases. And like, now, they didn't use OpenAI, they didn't use very, very large data sets. It was using some off the internet, right, data that was labeled and then the model built. Now, very frugally built. I think that's an opportunity we have. I mean, like Vamsi was referring to enterprise problems, they will be very specific. Right, and you can't go use like taking OpenAI, assuming OpenAI can solve it, it's a sledgehammer in the least. Many cases it may not even solve it. Your specific needs, it may solve some of it, but not all of it. So purpose-specific solutions is where we have an opportunity. You go create those data sets. We're always known for frugal because we're resource constrained always. I think that's the opportunity we have here. When all this hype dies, hopefully in the next 6 to 12 months, right? And like, I don't think we'll ever recover the money invested in any of these technologies, right? It's for the future. As a social investment, it was good. As a commercial investment, I don't think we'll recover that kind of money. And so when it's frugal point, very purpose specific. We are now working, not a commercial solution. They came to us saying like all the videos that is there's nothing on sign language. So if somebody is deaf, they can't process the videos. Okay, accessibility tools are good these days, so they can get on the fly kind of subtitling and such, but it's not good quality. So through CSR, they're funding creating education content with sign language embedded. like the way it shows up on TV shows and such. Now, can you believe in this day and age, 6 months back, they were re-recording education videos for high school. Re-recording with a sign language kind of feed, getting into the video. They came to us saying, we said, yeah, we'll do it. So we're now going to take any video you take, we can now generate the sign language and we'll embed the video, regenerate the video. Now, just yesterday, another NGO came to us saying like, they want to recognize sign language. Now we're going to pair the two. Now, it's not a commercial product. I don't know if anybody will ever pay for this. But there's no way we can use very large models for this. So we actually recorded in the lab. Sign language, somebody went and so it's very frugally done. So I think point problems where fast forward a year from now, I think we'll be now talking about specific. I was just telling Vamsi some time back that somebody had shared a list of GenAI startups in YC. If you look at every single startup, can you believe there are some 40 or 50 startups in the last 2 cohorts, right? It's an unbelievably large number. It's just everybody's riding the wave. But if you look at them, I know how many of them will be successful. Every one of them is solving a very specific, narrow problem. There are very few horizontal solutions. There's one startup I just got yesterday, my friend's son's startup. So they help enterprises evaluate models. So that's a horizontal. So that kind of tech, very few. Most of them are solving very vertical, very specific problems around a vertical use case.
Which also Vamshi touched upon.
So, and for those use cases, right now, when there's nothing else, maybe you'll use what is available. But soon you realize that the cost of using an internet-based resource, I think I should stress upon that, you have to be mindful of, it may not be, the use case may not justify that kind of cost. You have to find some alternates. So both in terms of that the specific data may not exist and also cost may not be justifiable. So I think those are things that's happening. On the research side, I don't think the world has changed much, other than we had 2 roundtable meetings in the last 1.5 years. Last January, we had a faculty roundtable closed-door meeting. We do these roundtables during R&D showcase. Last year's roundtable was like teaching and research in the times of ChatGPT. So and on a Sunday afternoon, we had 60 faculty in the room that day.
Wow.
That time we had about 100 in the campus, 60 were in the room that day. And we concluded that we just embrace it. You don't have to shun it. You don't have to hate it. You don't have to love it. It is what it is. Like any other tool, just embrace it. And and thankfully in our environment, our TAs do all the job. We just tell one of our students, Alam is sitting here. So we just tell the TAs okay, you know what? They can't use ChatGPT. They will figure out ways of evaluating assignments where if somebody uses ChatGPT, it will say no. Or we say, look, we don't care. Let them use ChatGPT. They'll come up with the assignments which is kind of post ChatGPT is still complex. Either way. So, and similarly, we had one more round of discussion this time, a little bit different. Otherwise, they are on their own paths on the research side. Startups, I don't think there are as many. I wish we had more AI startups. I don't think we have as many as I would like to see.
No, I think great insights there from your perspective as well. I was surprised to hear that there aren't so many in IIIT, considering that this is, the hub of so many entrepreneurs who want to do something in tech, who want to do something in AI, GenAI. So it's interesting. But I think also going back to what Vamshi and Arjun talked about, unless you have a very specific use case, unless you're solving a certain problem which is solvable by you, it just doesn't make any sense. Even for us, one of our portfolio companies, Slang Labs, you all must be familiar. This whole conversational piece, they were one of the early players. The founder, also founded a company called Little Eye Labs, which was the only company that was bought by Facebook from India. They acquired them when Facebook was still Facebook. So they had, created a conversational AI, like a voice assistant, which could just overlay on any app, any e-commerce, application as part of the application itself, contextual, multilingual. It would understand what the user is speaking and be able to deliver results from the application, right? Like, for example, with Musical, one of Kalari startups, I'm just giving an example. If you have the Slang Conva assistant, you would be able to say, okay, I have a deep voice, I'm interested in Ilya Raja, what kind of classes would you suggest for me? So it would be able to understand, take this unstructured data in whatever accent language I've spoken in and give me a useful result, right? From the application, a certain teacher who aligns to my requirement, right? But then they realized, and there wasn't enough pickup because not enough customers were using voice, and they took a step back, and now they've created a dev platform. It's a low-code meta prompt based platform where they're giving it two different of course, enterprises, customers, anybody who wants to create this voice assistant for themselves, for their companies, for their apps, they've given it as a platform that you can use Canva and then create this for your own applications, right? So they also sort of ended up pivoting in that sense, right? And now they're, they have certain customers in, across different sectors. So I think even the time piece in terms of, how anachronous is this? Are you ahead of time? Are you, is the infrastructure ready? We talked about WS. They had that problem that they were solving. The infra wasn't ready, and now probably, it may not even be as relevant because there's so much that's come out, and you can't even compete with, with the speed at which, things are changing and evolving. And every day we keep hearing, new updates and different things that are happening. So, given all of this, and I think great insights from the speakers in terms of defining, what is it that you as individuals may be good at, what is a problem that you see which you can solve, is it practical, is it feasible, is it solvable, and then should you solve it, can you solve it for enterprise, for example, and in a way which can be scalable, sustainable. How do you look at problems from that perspective, and then using GenAI, if you have to, as a tool which can enable that to happen, right? I think great takeaways from today's panel in terms of, how we can actually look at this entire thing. Have we made it bigger than it already is? So we'll close on this note, maybe just a couple of questions because we're over time. I think a lot of whatever earlier we talked about, we've covered, from the analytics piece, from the cost optimization piece, from tangible benefits of GenAI, where it could go. Thank you so much. Thank you, panelists, for all of these nuggets of wisdom. I think it was a lot of takeaways here, a lot of practical takeaways, a lot of startup ideas, and what's worked, what hasn't worked. I think they may be here for a little bit. If anybody wants to take anything offline, thank you to all of you for joining us today. Thank you, Headstart, for organizing this. We'll wrap up. Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.